It started with a look, not a long one, not obviously lingering, but it lasted a beat too long for brothers. No one else would have noticed, but I did. It happened in the kitchen, 2 days after my adoptive brother Jason came back from college. I was chopping garlic. He leaned against the counter, watching. At first, everything felt normal. Small talk, bad jokes, casual teasing. The usual rhythm we'd always fallen into, until he reached over to grab a piece of bread from beside me. His hand brushed mine. I flinched. He didn't. He just smiled, easy, unreadable, and kept talking like nothing happened. But it had. Something had. We hadn't lived under the same roof in almost a year. Jason was now 23, halfway through law school. I was 20, still figuring things out, still home. When our parents left for a 2-week anniversary trip, I expected awkward silences, different routines, growing distance. But that's not what happened. Instead, it was like we slipped right back into the comfort we'd always had, just with something new humming underneath. Tension, awareness, questions I wasn't ready to face. That night, we stayed up watching movies. We shared popcorn, laughed at the same dumb scenes, fought over the remote. At some point, he stretched his arm behind me along the back of the couch. I pretended not to notice, but I couldn't unfeel the warmth behind my shoulders. When the credits rolled, we didn't move. "You've been quiet lately," Jason said, voice low. "I'm tired," I lied. He turned slightly, studying me. "You always say that." His gaze didn't feel like a brother's. "Not anymore." I stood up too fast. "I'm going to bed." He nodded slowly. "All right. Night, Eli." His voice sounded like it wanted to say more. The next morning, I tried to shake it off. Blamed it on the heat, on not sleeping, on overthinking, but I couldn't ignore the way my chest clenched every time he entered a room. We made coffee in silence. "You good?" he asked finally. "Fine." He didn't buy it. He never did. Later that day, he suggested we go for a drive. "Like old times," he said. We ended up at the lake just outside town. No one else was around. Jason skipped rocks across the surface. I stood beside him, arms folded, heart racing. "I missed this," he said suddenly. "Yeah," I replied, though I wasn't sure what this meant anymore. Then he turned to me, and for the first time, his expression cracked. "I know something's going on," he said. "You've changed." I froze. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" he asked. "You think I haven't noticed the way you look at me?" The words hit like a punch. I stared at him, terrified. "I didn't mean to," I started, but my voice caught. "It's not just you," he said, stepping closer. My heart stuttered. "What are you saying?" I asked. He looked away. "I don't know. I've been confused too. I should have felt relief. But all I felt was fear. Fear of what it meant, of what could happen next. Because we weren't strangers. We weren't just two guys figuring themselves out. We were raised as brothers. We stood in silence, the lake glinting behind us, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down. Jason finally broke the tension. "Let's go home." On the drive back, the radio filled the quiet. Neither of us spoke, but everything had changed. I knew it. He knew it. And nothing would ever be the same again. We didn't talk about it the next day. Jason acted like nothing had happened at the lake. He made pancakes, teased me about waking up late, asked if I wanted to binge-watch that dumb detective show we always hated. Like he'd erased the whole conversation from his memory. I wanted to believe I'd imagined it, but I hadn't, because every glance, every small silence between us carried new weight. Like we were standing on a frozen lake, both hearing the cracks beneath our feet, but pretending we didn't. That afternoon, I stayed in my room. I needed distance, space to think, to forget the way my stomach flipped when he said he'd been confused too. By evening, I was still sitting there, staring at my ceiling, trying to piece myself back together. A knock on the door. "Can I come in?" Jason's voice. I hesitated. "Yeah." He stepped in slowly, quiet for once. "No jokes, no forced normalcy. I just wanted to check on you," he said. "I'm fine," I replied, too fast, too sharp. He sat down on the edge of my bed, keeping distance. "I meant what I said yesterday," he said, "about being confused." I stared at the wall. "You shouldn't have said it." "I know," he admitted, "but I didn't want to lie to you." Silence filled the space between us. "I don't know what this is," he continued, voice quieter now, "but I know I've been thinking about you in ways I shouldn't." I turned to him. "Then stop." His eyes met mine, steady. "I've tried." I looked away. Jason sighed and stood. Maybe I should go stay at Dylan's for a few days. My chest tightened. The thought of him leaving shouldn't have hurt, but it did. Still, I nodded. That's probably a good idea. He left the room without another word. Jason packed light. A backpack, his phone, and a look I couldn't read. Before leaving, he paused by the front door. "If you ever want to talk about anything, I'm here." And then he was gone. The silence after was deafening. At first, I felt relief. The house was calmer. My thoughts weren't being stirred up by every shift in his posture, every look, but by the second night I was restless. I'd wake up reaching for noise, music, TV, anything to drown out what I didn't want to admit. I missed him. Not just his presence. I missed our stupid routines, his bad jokes, the ease I always felt before things changed. On the third night, he called. "Hey," he said. "Hey, can we talk?" We met at the park near our old middle school. It was late, almost no one around, just the sound of wind in the trees and the hum of street lamps. Jason looked different. Not in any physical way. Something in his energy. Calmer. Or maybe just more tired. "I've been thinking," he said, hands in his pockets, "about what this is, what it means." I waited. "We can't go down that road," he said. "Whatever we're feeling, it can't go anywhere." I nodded, throat tight. He continued. "I don't want to ruin everything we've built. You're my brother, Eli. Maybe not by blood, but in every way that matters." "Then why did you say it?" I asked. "Why didn't you just pretend nothing was wrong?" "Because I didn't want to lie to myself anymore." The words landed harder than I expected. "I care about you," he said. "That's never been the problem. The problem is, I care in ways I shouldn't." "I know," I whispered. We stood there, both not moving. Jason stepped closer, but didn't touch me. His voice dropped. "I just needed you to know it wasn't one-sided. You're not crazy." It felt like something cracked inside me. "I've been holding it in for months," I said, thinking I was broken for feeling this way. "You're not broken," he said. "You're human." I let out a shaky breath. "So what now?" Jason looked at me, eyes heavy. "Now we set boundaries. We stop before this turns into something that hurts us both." I nodded, even though every part of me wanted to step closer instead. "I'll come back tomorrow," he said. "But we keep things normal, like before. No tension, no almosts." "Can we do that?" I asked. He didn't answer, but he reached out and touched my shoulder, just for a moment, then turned and walked away. That night I couldn't sleep again, but this time the restlessness felt different. Not like confusion, more like grief. Because we'd said the right things, promised the right decisions. But none of that stopped the truth from being what it was. This wasn't just a phase or a crush. It was real, and it was something neither of us could have. Jason moved back in the next day. We didn't talk about the park. He tossed his backpack onto the floor, gave me a casual nod, and asked what was for dinner. Like nothing happened. Like we weren't walking around a landmine made of glances and silences. We played the part, laughed at shows we'd seen a dozen times, talked about college, people we used to know, meaningless things that didn't threaten the balance. The tension didn't vanish. It just settled into the walls. Quiet, watchful, waiting. One evening, a few days later, he came home from the gym later than usual. I was in the kitchen when he walked in. "You okay?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then, "Yeah, just needed time to think." "About us?" He looked up, startled. We hadn't said the word in days. "There is no us," he replied, but too slowly. "Right," I said, returning to the dishes. "Just brothers." His voice was quiet. "Is that all we are?" I stopped. This was the thing we weren't supposed to say. The thread we promised not to tug on. "Jason," I said carefully. We agreed. "I know what we said. But now you're asking questions we can't afford to answer." He leaned against the counter. "Do you ever feel like we messed up by trying to ignore it?" I turned to face him. "Do you want the truth?" He nodded. "Every single day." His expression didn't change, but I saw it. That flash of something deep and familiar. Not desire, not guilt, something more dangerous. Longing. A week passed, things calmed down, or maybe we just got better at pretending. Jason started going out more, said he needed space. I didn't ask questions. I didn't want the answers. Then one night I saw him at the local bar. I hadn't planned on being there. My friend Mason dragged me out after days of isolation. I just needed air, a distraction. But then I spotted him, near the back, sitting close to someone I didn't recognize. A guy. They weren't touching. Not really. But they were talking close. Jason was smiling in that way he only did when he let his guard down. I stared too long. Jason noticed. His face froze. I turned and walked out before he could come over. He got home an hour later. I was in the living room, pretending to scroll my phone. My heart felt like it had been dropped off a cliff. "You saw me," he said. I didn't respond. He sat down across from me, elbows on his knees. "It wasn't what you think." "You don't know what I think." "Then tell me." I met his eyes. "I think you found someone you're allowed to want." He looked away. "And I think I need to stop hoping for something I'll never get," I added. Jason rubbed the back of his neck. "I don't know what I'm doing, Eli. I don't even know what I feel half the time." "You looked happy," I said. "That doesn't mean it felt right." "It wasn't wrong," I shot back. "You weren't breaking any rules." "Not like we were." Silence. He stood. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "But you did." "I was trying to protect us." "I stood too. Or yourself." Jason didn't answer. Just stared like he didn't know which part of him to listen to. The next few days were cold, polite, careful. Every word exchanged like passing notes through a locked door. Then came the phone call. Mom and Dad were coming back early. Their trip had been cut short because Dad got sick. Nothing serious, just enough for them to fly home sooner. Suddenly, the world rushed in again. Expectations. Roles. Rules. Jason came into my room that night. "We need to get back to normal," he said. "Define normal." "Pretend harder." I nodded. We knew how to do that. Their flight landed the next morning. We picked them up, helped with bags, asked all the right questions, Everything felt rehearsed. Jason turned it on like a switch. I followed. But something inside me had cracked. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the version of myself that existed before that summer. The one who didn't feel things that couldn't be named. The one who didn't look at his brother and see something impossible. That version was gone, and in its place was someone who knew exactly what he wanted, and exactly why he could never have it. Things returned to how they'd been before Jason came back from college, at least on the surface. We ate dinners with our parents, laughed at their stories, watched reruns in the living room. Everything looked fine, normal, but inside, I was unraveling. The night he went out again, without saying where, I told myself I didn't care. I lied. I waited. I checked my phone more than once, then hated myself for it. He came home late. Didn't speak. I didn't ask. He walked past me like we were strangers. That hurt more than anything. The next day, I was in the garage looking for a charger. I found a box I hadn't seen in years. Old school notes, drawings, letters. One of them was from Jason. I unfolded it, shaky hands giving me away. It was a birthday card from when I turned 15, a joke, like always. But at the bottom, he'd written, "No matter what, I've got your back." Back then, it meant protection from bullies, from feeling alone. Now I wasn't so sure it still applied. The breaking point came 2 nights later. Jason and I were cleaning up after dinner. Our parents had gone to bed. The silence between us was thick, sharp around the edges. "You've been different," I said, not looking up. "So have you," he replied, drawing a plate. "This can't keep going like this." He put the dish down. "What do you want me to say?" "Anything. Something. The truth." Jason stared at me. "The truth is, I don't know how to be around you anymore." That hit harder than I expected. "Then why come back?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. "Because I thought I could handle it. That we could be normal again. And you were wrong." "Yeah," he said. Quiet. Honest. I stepped back. "So what now?" Jason looked tired. "We do what we're supposed to. We move on." "With what? People we don't care about." "With people we're allowed to care about." I turned away. "You already started." His voice sharpened. "Don't make this about that night." "Why not? You clearly want someone else. Someone easy." He stepped closer. "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it?" He opened his mouth, closed it. "I don't know." That was the problem. He never knew. And I was always left holding the pieces. That night I sat on the roof, knees pulled in, breathing through the weight of everything I couldn't fix. Jason found me there, eventually. He didn't speak at first, just stood behind me. Then he said, "I didn't kiss him. I didn't turn. You don't owe me that." "I do." I stayed quiet. He sat beside me. I panicked. I needed to feel something else, but I couldn't. Not with him. I glanced at him, finally. "So you came home and ignored me?" "I didn't know what else to do. Being near you makes it harder to pretend." "Then stop pretending." "I can't," he said, almost a whisper. "Not here. Not with everyone around. I'm not as brave as you." "I'm not brave," I said. "I'm just tired of lying." Jason looked at me. "I miss you. I miss us. Before we knew what this was." "I don't." He flinched. "Because even back then," I said, "I was already feeling it. You just hadn't caught up yet." Jason nodded slowly, like he finally understood the weight I'd been carrying alone. We stayed on the roof for a while, saying nothing more. The silence was different this time. Not cold, not distant, just real. The next morning, he was gone. A note on the table. "I'm not running. I'm figuring it out. I'll be back." That day passed slowly. Everything felt louder without him. The footsteps in the hallway, the sound of drawers closing, the conversations I had to force with our parents. I replayed everything, almost every silence, every line we didn't cross, and the ones we did without meaning to. And I waited. 3 days later, he texted me, "Can we meet?" We met in the parking lot behind the community center, where no one else went after dark. I was nervous. Not because of what he'd say, but because of what I'd say if he asked again. He stood there, hands in his jacket, expression unreadable. "I've been thinking," he said, "about everything. You, me, the feelings." I didn't interrupt. I've been scared. But I realized hiding doesn't make them go away. I nodded. He took a breath. "I don't have answers. I just know I want to stop hurting you by being halfway in." "Then don't be. You want me to choose?" "No," I said. "I want you to be honest. For once." Jason stepped closer. "The truth is, I love you." The words weren't gentle. They were raw. "I don't know what to do with it," he said, "but it's there." My chest felt tight. I stepped back, shaking. "You can't just say that and expect it to fix everything." "I'm not. I just didn't want you to think it was one-sided." Tears stung my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. "It doesn't change the fact that we can't have this." Jason nodded. "But we can stop pretending it never happened." We didn't kiss. We didn't touch. But we stood there, in the quiet, knowing the truth had finally been spoken. What came next? Neither of us knew. But it wouldn't be silence anymore. We didn't talk again for a week. After that night in the parking lot, I expected something to happen. A call, a message, a knock on my door. But it was silence. Not cold, not angry, just still. And maybe that was the point. Jason had said what needed to be said. So had I. The rest wasn't about answers anymore. It was about what we'd choose to do with the truth. I saw him again on a Saturday. He was walking out of the library as I was heading in. We stopped at the top of the stairs, staring at each other like strangers who knew too much. He smiled first. "Hey," he said. "Hey." It was simple, careful, but it didn't feel wrong. He asked how I'd been. I told him about a project I was working on. He mentioned a job interview. We talked like people rebuilding something they weren't sure could hold weight anymore, but were willing to try. And then he said, "I've been going to therapy." I blinked. "Really?" He nodded. "Twice a week. Trying to figure out what all of this means, where it comes from, what to do with it." "That's good. I'm not doing it just for me," he added. "I'm doing it so I don't hurt you again." Those words hit deep. "You don't owe me anything," I said. "I disagree." We stood in silence for a moment. Then he stepped aside. "I'll see you around?" I nodded. "Yeah, you will." A few days later, I told Mason everything. Not the whole thing. Not the private parts. But enough to make him go quiet. And then he said something I didn't expect. "I think you were brave." I laughed. "I think I was reckless." Sometimes those two look the same. He didn't judge me. Didn't flinch. Just sat beside me like it was normal to admit something that big. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was carrying it alone. Weeks passed. Life filled back in. Jason and I saw each other in passing. No tension, just space. Space that gave us room to breathe, to grow separately. We didn't pretend anymore. That was the biggest difference. We didn't ignore what happened. But we didn't let it define every moment either. One afternoon, he sent me a voice note. "There's a version of this story where we never talk again." where we avoid it forever. But that's not the story I want. I want us to be better, not bitter. I listened to it twice. Then I replied, "Me too." By the end of the summer, we'd found a rhythm. Not the one we used to have. Not the one that cracked. A new one, quieter, respectful, cautious. We'd check in, share updates, sit together on the porch sometimes, just talking about life. But we never went back to where we were. We couldn't. And we both knew that. One night, right before Jason went back to school, we sat on the curb outside the house, watching the street. He turned to me. "I think I'll always wonder what it could have been." "Yeah," I admitted. "Me too. But wondering is different than regretting." I looked at him. "Do you regret it?" He shook his head. "No, because it taught me something. About honesty, about control, about how far not dealing with your feelings can push you." I nodded. "Same." He stood. "I need to go pack." I stood with him. "You're going to be okay, Eli," he said, "even if it doesn't feel like it now." I know. And so am I. Jason left the next day. I didn't cry. I sat on the bed, rereading the card he gave me before he walked out the door. "You'll always matter to me. In the right way now." That line stuck, because it meant we'd both chosen the right path. The painful one. The one that required boundaries and space and strength. A month later, I spoke at a campus event during LGBTQ+ Awareness Week. I didn't tell the full story, but I talked about shame, about silence, about the danger of burying feelings until they come out sideways. I said, sometimes love shows up in impossible places. It's not always about acting on it. Sometimes it's about respecting it, learning from it, and letting it shape us, not break us. People clapped. Some cried. A few came up afterward and thanked me, but the part that mattered most came later that night. A message from Jason. "Heard what you said. Proud of you." That was enough. Not closure, not an ending, just proof that we survived it and didn't let it destroy what still mattered.